Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another election prediction video. This time we have President Joe Biden up against Senator Tim Scott of the state of South Carolina. So, as I fill in the safe states, I'd highly recommend subscribing to the channel if you aren't already. We're nearing and getting closer and closer to 1,000 subscribers. We're only like 180 subscribers away, which really isn't that much. I really think we could probably hit 1,000 subs in a few months, maybe even by the end of the year if uh, if a lot of people subscribe in that amount of time, that is. But let's just get right into this prediction. So Tim Scott, he would be one of the better Republican candidates, I believe. I think he would actually do quite decent. A lot of the Trump base, they would still unite behind him because he really hasn't done anything to anger them that much. And I still think he would do pretty well with independent voters because again, he just has a certain degree of likability about him, even though he's a bit of a boring candidate overall. But sometimes boring's just good enough to win. I mean, 2020 election, Biden was seen as the more boring candidate, but he was just perceived as the boring moderate candidate, and that was enough for him to beat Trump. So let's just get right into this. So Colorado, starting off, it's a very progressive state. I think Biden would pretty much easily win it by over 10%. It wouldn't be competitive at all here. New Mexico, it would definitely go down to likely. And even Virginia, with Tim Scott as the nominee, I think it would go down to a lean margin. I think Biden would only win here by like 4.5%. So he would definitely make it a lot more competitive than usual. Because, again, you run someone who isn't like, a Trump Republican or someone who's just a middle of the road, like, doesn't hate Trump but doesn't, like, fully stand by him. You run someone like that, and they'll perform a lot better in the state of Virginia than usual. In Alaska, Tim Scott would do well with most of the Republican base here. Still would do pretty decent with the Republican rural voters as well, and just moderates in general. And he'd probably get Lisa Murkowski's endorsement, thus giving him a safe Republican victory here. In Iowa and Ohio, the big question is, will he get as much populist voters behind him like Trump? It's possible we could see a bit of a drop off here, but I still think Iowa goes safe Republican. I still think he would unite most of the base here. I don't see him losing that much among populist Republicans either. Ohio, I would just put it down as a likely state. I just think most Republicans would be able to win Ohio by a likely margin at this point. Even Nebraska second would get a lot more competitive than usual, but still would be a Biden victory nonetheless. In the state of Maine, I would put it down as a likely state. I think Biden's margin would go a bit down here against a more sort of less right wing Republican in Tim Scott. But Maine second, it would probably go to Tim Scott by a likely margin. Still think he would hold most of the Trump base in this little district. Okay, let's see the next few states. So let's go to Florida and Texas. So starting off with Texas, I think he'd do a lot better than Trump in the urban and suburban areas. He would definitely lower Biden's margins that he had last time in 2020 in those areas, just because he's just a more appealable Republican than Trump here. It's a lot less toxic to those urban voters. And I just could see him just doing a bit better with those certain constituencies in Texas. In Florida, it's just becoming a Republican dominated state. It's honestly only a few years till it just goes completely safe Republican, honestly. But I'm going to put it as a likely Republican state. I think he will do quite well here. Probably just as well as Trump would. Okay, starting off North Carolina, I think he'd do pretty decent in North Carolina. Again, you really have to look at his performance with black voters in the state of South Carolina. He actually performed pretty well among them, so I could definitely see him lowering Biden's margin with those black voters, especially in the southern states. So I think you'd do actually quite decently with black voters in North Carolina, definitely lower the margins, and you'd do quite well with independent voters as well. You'd definitely do a bit better than Trump with them in the southern states of North Carolina, and even Georgia, I think you'd do quite decently as well. You just lock in those two states for the Republicans, thus already giving them a 251 electoral vote total, which means all he has to do is flip a couple more states and he could become president and defeat Joe Biden. Okay, starting off with New Hampshire, I think he'd definitely be a bit better of a candidate than Trump in the state of New Hampshire, probably make it down to a lean margin or so, but not enough to flip it. It's still a very socially liberal state. Tim Scott's extremely socially conservative, but less right-wing on other issues, which kind of just balances it out. But again, he wouldn't really do well in New Hampshire. I still think it would be quite Biden-leaning. Minnesota, I don't see it going to a lean, honestly. I think Biden would still do quite well in this state. Michigan, I still think it'd be a lean Biden state. Again, Tim Scott, he isn't as populist as Trump, so he wouldn't get the best margin out of Michigan. This is one state I could see Trump doing better than Tim Scott, actually. I'll leave Wisconsin and Pennsylvania for the end of the video, though. So, Nevada and Arizona. Again, on abortion, I'd actually think he's just favors some abortion restrictions, so I could just see that giving Biden a narrow victory in Nevada, because it is an extremely pro-choice state. Out of all the swing states, it's probably one of the most pro-choice states there is. And Arizona, I kind of think Tim Scott would be able to narrowly flip this state. I just think he's the right type of Republican to be able to get that narrow victory in Arizona, hit that sweet spot there. So we have Wisconsin and PA left. So these states are pretty hard to determine, just considering Tim Scott's anti-union views. So I think that honestly really hurts him in a state of like Pennsylvania. Has a lot of big population centers, a lot of union voters. It's very populist. I think Biden could pull off a narrow victory here, even with Tim Scott doing better with independent voters. Still think Biden would hang on there. But Wisconsin, which is typically more Republican than Wisconsin, and just a little bit of less union voters here, I think Tim Scott will be able to pull off a narrow victory. I mean, people forget that Scott Walker, he was governor of Wisconsin. He was very anti-union, and he was able to still win re-election here. So that's kind of what my judgment call is on Wisconsin, but a narrow victory nonetheless. I don't think it would be a cakewalk for Tim Scott, as some polls suggest, against Joe Biden. I think he would have some weaknesses with populist voters, especially in Pennsylvania and Michigan. But nonetheless, he's still able to win a narrow victory against Biden overall in the Electoral College. But other than that, thanks for watching the video. Leave some comments down below if you agree or disagree with this outcome. I'll see you all in the next one.